15 or longer years since I left Hulk Hogan. And my family is in the worst mess. Brooke doesn't talk to us. She's had twins. She got married. She didn't tell us. She had twins. She didn't tell us. She had a huge fight with Terry.
It started with silence. No grand announcement. No media frenzy. Just a soft, somber ripple that moved quietly through the wrestling world. Whispers turned to confirmations. The impossible had happened. Hulk Hogan, real name Terry Bell, gone. For fans, it didn't feel real. How could the man who body-slammed giants, who turned wrestling into mainstream entertainment, who ruled the 80s and 90s with a bandana and a booming voice that shouted "What you're gonna do, brother," suddenly not be there anymore? Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a cultural icon, a larger-than-life figure. A superhero who didn't wear a cape, but wore yellow and red like battle armor. And now, that voice, that presence, that energy, was gone. But what shocked fans even more than the news of his death was what happened at his private funeral. Because while most of the coverage focused on celebrity attendees and wrestling legends coming together to say goodbye, it was one tribute that left the entire room in tears. It was his daughter, Brooke Hogan, and what she said, what she poured out in front of friends, family, and fellow legends, was absolutely stunning. Not because it was rehearsed, not because it was poetic, but because it was real. And for the first time, the world saw a side of Hulk Hogan that was never televised, never promoted, never part of the gimmick. This was the man behind the mustache, the father behind the fame, the soul behind the superstar. And if you stick with us through this story, this real, raw, powerful story, you'll hear why Brooke's tribute didn't just honor Hulk Hogan. It revealed a version of him few ever knew. So before we take you into that room, into that moment where time stood still, take a second to subscribe, hit that like button, turn on the notification bell, because this isn't just another celebrity farewell. This is about legacy, love, family, and the price of being larger than life. And it all begins with the man who told us to eat our vitamins and say our prayers, but in the end, taught us so much more without saying a word. The days following Hulk Hogan's death were a mix of shock and remembrance. Social media was flooded with tributes from fans, wrestlers, actors, and athletes alike. From Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to Ric Flair, John Cena, even musicians and actors who grew up watching him, everyone had a story. Everyone remembered the first time they saw him. The energy, the charisma, the presence. But amid the public mourning, the Hogan family remained quiet. No tweets, no press release, just silence. That was intentional. Sources close to the family revealed that Hulk Hogan, in his final wishes, asked for privacy. He wanted his funeral to be intimate, sacred, not a spectacle, not a red carpet event. And so, Sharon Hogan, his former wife and mother of Brooke and Nick along with their children, honored that. The funeral was held in Clearwater, Florida, a place he called home for years. Simple, private, beautiful. The room was filled with familiar faces, fellow wrestlers, family, friends, a handful of close celebrities. But there were no camera crews, no live stream, just people who knew the man, not the brand. When the eulogies began, there were tears, laughter, shared stories about the wild road trips, the backstage pranks, the injuries, the battles, stories of Hulk, the wrestler, Terry, the entertainer. But when Brooke walked to the front of the room, everything changed. She stood there in silence for a few seconds, not for drama, but because she couldn't speak. The emotions were too heavy. Her eyes red, her hands slightly shaking. She took a deep breath and began. "Everyone in this room knew him as Hulk Hogan," she said, her voice cracking, "but, to me, he was just Dad." Those 5 words pierced the air, and in that moment, the energy in the room shifted. Brooke didn't talk about wrestling belts. She didn't talk about fame or fortune. She talked about car rides at night where he would play old soul music. She talked about Sunday morning pancakes. She talked about how, even at his busiest, he would call her before every big performance. She had how he used to kneel beside her bed and say a prayer for her when she was little Evan when he got home late from the road. He wasn't perfect, she said. But he never pretended to be. He was strong, but soft, loud, but deeply thoughtful. He carried so much pain privately, pain he never wanted anyone else to carry for him. The room was still. Even the toughest wrestlers, the ones who rarely showed emotion, had tears in their eyes. Brooke continued, "When the world cheered him, he was grateful. When they turned on him, he was broken. But when I told him I loved him, it always lit something in him. Like he still couldn't believe he deserved it. She then pulled a letter from her purse. A letter her father wrote to her when she was just 16. She read a piece of it aloud. "No matter where life takes us. No matter how crazy this world gets. Remember this, your father is proud of you. Always. If I fail at everything else, let me succeed at loving you." By the time she finished, there was no holding back. The room erupted in applause, raw, unfiltered, tearful applause. Because what Brooke Hogan gave wasn't just a daughter's goodbye, it was a lens into the soul of a man who, for so long, had been hidden behind a character. What followed was a long emotional embrace between Brooke and her mother, a private moment that, for many, symbolized healing, forgiveness, and unity. Because the truth is, Hulk Hogan's life wasn't perfect. He had controversies, public battles, mistakes, moments he admitted he wished he could take back. But he was also a man who tried, who fought for his kids, who wrestled with more than opponents. He wrestled with guilt, regret, and the burden of fame. And Brooke's tribute didn't hide any of that. She honored the complexity, the contradictions. And that's why it hit so deeply. After the service, many of the attendees spoke about the impact of her words. He wasn't just a legend, one of his old WWE co-workers said. He was a dad who loved his daughter, and I think today, she made sure we all saw that. Another friend said, "That tribute, that was the realest thing I've ever heard at a funeral." She didn't sugarcoat him, she just loved him. In the days that followed, word of the tribute began to spread. Even though the funeral wasn't recorded or broadcasted, people began quoting it online. Fans created art and tribute videos using Brooke's words. Some even began revisiting Hulk's interviews, his music career, and old episodes of Hogan Knows Best with a new perspective. It wasn't about nostalgia anymore, it was about understanding. And maybe that's the most powerful part of all this. Because in a world where icons are remembered only for their stage personas, Brooke Hogan reminded us that behind the bandana, the muscles, the spotlight, was just a man who tried his best. And maybe that's enough. So if you've listened this far, thank you. Because this story isn't just about a funeral, it's about family. About how grief brings clarity, about how the strongest tribute you can give isn't always a speech, it's the truth. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, leave a comment below. What's your favorite Hulk Hogan memory? What did he mean to you growing up? Click like if you believe that legends are made, not just in rings or arenas, but in kitchens, phone calls, and letters from father to daughter. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, stories that go beyond the headlines, stories that matter. Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. Your daughter's words made sure you'll never be forgotten, not just as a wrestler, but as a man who loved deeply, and in the end, maybe that's the greatest legacy of all.